everyone, it is that time of year when everyone does the mid-year book freakout tag. This is one of the tags I do really enjoy doing because it kind of helps me look back on how I'm doing so far and my goals. Am I reading the things that I said I was going to read at the beginning of the year, and helps me kind of like set up what I'm going to do for the rest of the year in order to either meet those goals or decide I'm done with them or whatever. So I'm going to start the tag in a moment, but first I wanted to kind of do an update on, am I, meeting my goals that I set? I only set 2 goals at the end of 2020, and so I didn't want to do a separate goals update video because I wouldn't have much to say. So basically my 2 goals for 2021 were to first read books off my shelf. So I wanted to read the books, especially the standalone books that I owned. And I think I counted, I had 110 standalone books. That's not books in a series, standalone books on my shelf, and I wanted to get that down to closer to at least 50 or less by the end of the year. And then also my second goal was to read books in series, especially books that I already owned that were part of series. So those are my 2 goals. So let's see how I did so far. So I have actually read a lot of stuff so far this year, mainly because in January I did that thing where I read only short fiction. So I have read 135 books or short stories or whatever, 135 things so far this year, which is a ton. But I think that's really skewed by the fact that I read all that short fiction at the very beginning of the year, but it's still quite a lot of books. So let's see how many of those were books that I had owned. And I only counted books that I owned prior to 2021 because I really wanted to read my backlist stuff that I already owned. So some of these might have been books that I bought this year and read, but in terms of books that I already owned prior to this year, only 28 of those books are books that I already owned. So that's not great. And then in terms of series, only 8 books went towards series that I had started prior to this year. So I didn't count series that I started this year because I did already start a bunch of new series, which is fine, but I also wanted to continue on in series, complete some series. So that means that out of those 135 books, 99 of them did not go towards either of my 2 goals. So that's not great. Not saying that I'm gonna completely change up how I do things for the rest of the year, but I do want to really make sure I'm focusing on my shelves. I have been really focusing a lot on library books, obviously, from that, and I'm still going to be getting new releases from the library. If you wanted that information, I ended up reading 28 new releases, so books that came out in this year. So I'm actually tied for books I own and books that were new releases. So then obviously I got from the library also books that were not new releases as well. So I think I really want to try to focus on reading my shelves, doing my goals, and also, just reading new releases from the library, not reading as many backlist books in the library, stick to my backlist books that I own. So that'll be kind of what I'm reconfiguring my mind for the rest of the year. So that's enough of my goal update. And now onto the mid-year book freakout tag. The first prompt is the best book you've read so far this year. And I'm actually gonna talk about 2 of them because I wanna talk about one from the first quarter and then one from the second quarter. I haven't put out a video yet of my second quarter favorites since it's not the end of June yet. So this will get you a little teaser of one that I just read that I loved. So from the first quarter of the year, The Night Gardener by Jonathan Oxier was one of my favorites. I've just found that I really enjoy this historical fiction, creepy middle grade type of book. I love this. This is about 2 siblings who end up having to leave their home in Ireland. This is during the famine in Ireland. And so they move to England and start working in this manor house, and things are just a little off. The people are off and weird things are happening, especially at night. And yeah, I loved the creepiness factor of this. Pretty much everything about this was just perfect for me. And then going along with creepy middle grade, my favorite book from the second quarter of the year was Ophi's Ghosts by Justina Ireland, which was also a historical fiction book with a ghost story as well. It wasn't as creepy as this one was, but it was just that whole paranormal ghost story type element combined with historical fiction, which is really great. And basically this is just about a girl named Ophi that after a traumatic event, she finds out that she can see ghosts. Her mom and her end up going to work at this old manor house, which is of course full of a bunch of ghosts. very kind of similar. Both of them, people going to work as servants at a manor house and running into creepy events. So yes, loved both of those books. Number 2 is best sequel you read so far this year. And I was a little worried knowing that I hadn't read a lot of sequels. I was like, will I have an answer for this? But it turned out that out of the like 8 sequels I read, like 5 of them were 5 stars. So I think I did pretty well on at least the sequels I did read were ones I really enjoyed. So I just want to highlight 2 right now that I really liked. The first one was The Laws of Murder by Charles Finch, and I think this is book like maybe book 8. I don't know, there's no numbers on here, but this is in the Charles Lennox murder mystery kind of series, detective series. He's a private investigator. This is a historical fiction book, takes place in the late 1800s, and I had just waited a long time since reading the other books. Like I think it had been like over a year since I had read the previous book in the series, and so I was wondering if I had lost interest, but then this ended up being 5 stars. So I'm definitely diving back into the series and want to finish it out because there's only like 2 more books in the series. And then one I just finished recently was Dead Voices by Katherine Arden. This is book 2 after Small Spaces. And Small Spaces is also like a creepy middle grade, but it's a contemporary. And the first book, like, I liked Small Spaces a lot. I thought it was fun, but I didn't really find it scary at all. It was just kind of like a fun Halloween type read. But this one, I actually found very scary, and I couldn't read it at night, and I had to put it down because I was creeped out a few times. So I think she just did a really great job, like upping the creep factor. At least for me, the stuff in here I found creepy, and everybody finds different things scary, but I did find this one really creepy, and I just really enjoyed following the characters again and stuff like that. So it was another 5-star sequel that I read so far this year. Next is new release you haven't read yet but want to, and I have it out from the library, so I'm going to read it soon, and that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And the only reason I haven't read this yet is that I have a group of friends that are buddy reading this in July, so I figured even though I had it, that I would just wait a couple weeks and read it next month. Very excited because I loved The Martian. I know probably a lot of people have this on their list of ones that they are definitely want to get to, so that's happening soon. Next is your most anticipated release for the rest of the year, and that will be Well Matched by Jen DeLuca. This is the 3rd in the series that started with Well Met, and Well Met was one of my very favorite books. Was that 2 years ago? I've read it 3 times so far. I really love this. I was disappointed in book 2, so I just have higher hopes for this 3rd book because I know who the relationship is, and I just am hoping that she will, bring back a lot more of the Renaissance fair setting in this 3rd book, because the 2nd book didn't really have much of that setting. It just didn't have a lot of the charm as the 1st book for me. So I am still really anticipating this one. Hope it's as good as the 1st one. I think this is coming out in the fall. Next is Biggest Disappointment, and I have 2 for this because one was like a continuation of series that I was looking forward to, and the other one was like a big buddy read that I was just assuming that I would like more, and both of them ended up being 2 stars. So in terms of the sequel that I didn't like Network Effect by Martha Wells. This is number 5 in the Murderbot series, and it just didn't work for me when she changed into the full novel format. So the first 4 books are novellas, and then this one was a full novel. And then number 6 I still enjoyed because it went back to novella. So just full novel version for Murderbot just doesn't work for me. It dragged in a lot of places. It was just too much description and boring time. Like I just wanted the short fun action, and snarky Murderbot stuff that you get in the novellas, and I just don't think it worked in the full book. It was a 2-star for me. And the other disappointment was The Brave by James Bird. And this was the buddy group book that we read for middle grade March. And, I was just really excited about this, and it just did not work for me. It just focused a lot more on a romance than I was expecting, especially when you look at the description. It doesn't really talk about a romance at all, and then the romance basically took over the entire book. I thought it also was pretty manipulative in some of the things it was doing in terms of emotional manipulation and stuff like that. So yeah, this was a 2-star as well. So both those books were big disappointments for me. Whenever I read a big group read, I always want to enjoy enjoy it and have a lot to talk about. There was still a lot to talk about in this book. I just wanted to like it more than I did. And then the next one is Biggest Surprise. And for this one, I want to talk about an author that I've read 2 of her books this year. So prior to this year, I have tried a few historical romances, and they just haven't been for me because I felt like they were, I don't know, like the dialogue was too cheesy. I just wasn't into the way that the like chemistry between them. I didn't enjoy the like sex scenes and things like that. Like I just haven't been having good luck with historical romances, but I wanted to try Courtney Mulan because I had heard good things about her. And then I tried 2 of her novellas at the beginning of the year, and then I've read 1 of her full-length novels so far. So I've read 3 of her books in 2021, and I like them all. I just think that she is my author for historical romance, and I might try a couple other authors if I can find ones that do dialogue the same way she does. I just think her dialogue is so witty, and she also creates these like female characters that are really strong and like, you know, stand toe-to-toe with their love interest and all that stuff, and I just have really enjoyed them so far. So the first one that I read was Mrs. Martin's Incomparable Adventure, and I really liked how this was 2 older women, so they were both in their 60s and 70s, and so that was really fun. And then I read The Governor's Affair, and that was 5 stars. The witty banter in that one was just top notch. I really enjoyed the relationship. And then, like I said, I did read a full-length novel, but I'm not going to tell you about it yet because that's actually part of a secret TBR that you'll probably find out about next month. So yeah, I've read 3 of Courtney Mulan's books and gave them all 4 or 5 stars. So I think that that was a really surprise to me because I hadn't been liking books in the historical romance genre prior to that. And then next is Favorite New Author. And this one, this is an author that I had read 1 of her books prior to this year, but I just didn't really get into it, and I think it was the format I read it in, so I actually reread that book, and then another book by her, and now she's a new favorite author, and that's Grace Lynn. And actually I've read 3 books by her this year. I reread Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. I'd read it on an audiobook the first time, and I just think that the audiobook didn't work for me because her style is like stories within stories. So she tells like folk tales inside of like a writer's story, and it just worked better for me to read it physically, and ended up giving it 5 stars. Really loving this. And then I also read Mulan Before the Sword, which is a prequel to the movie Mulan that she wrote, and that one, so it's like Mulan when she's younger and she's going on this like quest to save her sister, and I thought that one was really great, and we'll be reading that one to my kids at some point. And then I went out basically right away and bought Starry River of the Sky. I haven't read this one yet, but I'm going to be reading it next month for middle grade magic. And so yeah, she's just become a new favorite author for me. I also read another book by her called The Year of the Dog with my daughter for school. And this was one of my favorites because I'm not a huge fan of contemporary middle grade. It's just not my main genre, like contemporary that's just about like going to school and making friends and stuff like that. That's just not something I enjoy. So I kind of want to stick with her fantasy stuff, but her fantasy books have been top notch for me, and a new favorite author. And I do want to go, there's one more in this kind of like trio of companion novels, and I'll probably buy that as soon as I have the budget to buy more books. I'll go out and buy that one too, because now I'm obsessed with Grace Lynn as an author. Next is Newest Fictional Crush, and usually I just talk about my favorite like new couple, but I actually haven't read that many romance books. Other than the Courtney Mulan books, I've only read like maybe 1 other romance book, so I just don't have a favorite like couple. I don't have a fictional crush, so we're just gonna skip that one. And the next one is Newest Favorite Character, and that has to be Murderbot from the Murderbot Diaries. I just love Murderbot's snark, and it's why I keep going back to the series. Like, I don't necessarily remember what happens in each of the books, like, because they're just kind of like watching an action movie but in a book, but I just love Murderbot as a character, and like the way they're so snarky and the way they interact with the humans and all that stuff. So yeah, just love Murderbot as a character, and we'll continue to read the series as long as they are novellas, just to enjoy Murderbot as a character. And then next is a book that made you cry, and I must have a cold heart because I do not cry in a lot of books. But if I'm like looking at maybe a book that got me a little choked up or something like that, not necessarily full on tears, but gave me the feelings, I'll have to go with Audrey Hepburn, An Elegant Spirit. And this is written by her son, and this is just kind of like a biography, but it's not like necessarily you know, names and dates and all that stuff, events from her life. It's just him reflecting on what it was like to have Audrey Hepburn as a mother. And so there was just a lot of really touching moments in this book. And so it did probably get me a little choked up, but I wouldn't say full on cry. It just doesn't happen that often in books for me. And then in terms of book that made me happy, I read a lot of middle grade this year that just really made me happy. I love middle grade fantasy, and it does just make me happy to read a really fun middle grade fantasy book with fun characters and exciting adventures and stuff like that. So one that I want to talk about is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This was a 5-star prediction, and it actually was 5 stars. I just love the whimsical characters in this one. The main character, Sophie, and Howl is just like completely weird, but just fun to see he and Sophie interact, and a lot of the side characters. This book just made me smile the whole time. And then the other one that made me really happy was Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. That was one that I just hadn't for a long time read a fantasy book where I just like really wanted to get invested in the whole world, and that I just could not wait for the next book. But that one was it, and I just am very excited for the series to continue and to just like follow it along year by year, because I just think it's going to be a great series, and it just made me really happy to feel like I've discovered a new world that I love. And next is the most beautiful book that you have bought so far this year or received. And I'm going to talk about one I received as a gift, and that is Les Mis by Victor Hugo. And my parents got this for me for Christmas because I plan on reading Les Mis in the second half of the year as a buddy read with a friend. And I just think that this like leather bound version is beautiful. You know, it has like the end pages and all that, and it's just beautiful. I loved it. It's huge, but I think because it'll like lay out flat, it'll be an easier way to read such a big book. So that is the prettiest book that I have gotten so far this year. And the last prompt is, what books do you need to read for the rest of 2021? And really, I had done a video, you know, at the end of the year or at the beginning of 2021. I don't remember when I did it exactly, but I had you guys vote on the books that I own, which books I should read, and I picked 21 books to read in 2021. And that I have only read 2 of those 21 books. So I'm failing at that. I have time, obviously. I can read 19 books the rest of the year. I can make it happen, and I'm not going to get them out. They're like all right here are the 21 books. If you want to see that video, I'll put it down below if you want to actually know what the 21 books are that I need to read. Like I said, I've only read 2 of them. So I need to like just make a plan to, you know, how many would that be? I need to read at least 3 to 4 of those books every month for the rest of the year. That's not that many. I just need to like remember. I think it's just more of a remembering thing. I just forget to prioritize those. And so that's what the great thing about this tag is, it gives me time to like actually think, oh yeah, that's right, I need to pull those off and actually prioritize them each month. So that's it. If you haven't done this tag so far, it's always fun to see where people are in the middle of the year. So go ahead and do it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.